Okay, so for this video, we're going to be talking about our bees and extracting some honey. The video is going to be broken up into two parts. The first part, we're going to be looking at extracting some honeycomb, and the second part, we're going to be extracting some honey. The season started at the beginning of spring, so the beginning of September, and we're now at around about mid-February. So what we can see so far is that we've got 4 hives here. The first 2 hives, one of which I'm working on now, have done amazingly well. We've got 3 super boxes on top of the brood boxes on each of them, and the two adjacent ones, hives 3 and 4, they're doing as expected, but not quite as well as the first 2. I have no explanation as to why these first 2 are doing so well, but they are. Once I got into the super boxes, what I found was that not all of the frames were completely full. The ones that weren't completely full, we weren't going to be cutting honeycomb out of, but there were frames in there that were completely full, and they were going to be the frames that we were going to be cutting the honeycomb out of. And this is a good example of one of those. So once we selected all of our frames and took all the bees off, we took them inside in preparation for cutting the honeycomb out of the frames. Cutting the honeycomb out of the frame isn't difficult, it's maybe just a little time consuming. You've got 4 stainless steel wires that run through the frame to support the honeycomb that's in there. So the first thing is to cut those wires out and pull them out of the frame so you can then access the honeycomb. Once this is done, then what I'll do is take a knife and cut around the edge of the frame just to release the honeycomb from the frame, and then I'll drop it off onto a tray where I can have it ready for cutting into 8 pieces. A full slab of honeycomb weighs about 3.2 kilos, so if you can cut it perfectly into those 8 pieces, you'll get 8 400-gram blocks of honeycomb. And these fit just perfectly into the boxes we have. Once the block's been cut, it's just a simple matter of putting the honeycomb into the boxes, weighing it up to make sure that there's 400 grams. If there's not 400 grams, just add a bit more honey. But it's a pretty simple process from here on in. All I needed to do from here was repeat the whole process for another 25 frames. So once I'd finished, this was our final yield. We had 208 boxes of honeycomb, each at 400 grams. So I came out to about 83 kilograms of honeycomb, which was pretty good for midway through the season. Once this was finalized, I waited another 3 to 4 months, and we then moved on to the next part of the honey extraction, which was going to actually be taking out honey to put into buckets. We're now midway through May, and I'm halfway through collecting the frames that we're going to be needing for the honey extraction. Not all of the frames were full. In the end, we ended up with about 4 boxes of frames, probably that were around about 60-65% full, and this is what we're going to be extracting the honey out of. Now, I learnt my lesson from last year when I did the honey extraction. Because we were extracting towards the end of autumn and it was getting pretty cool, the honey was really viscous, and so it spun out. It was very difficult to spin out, and it was difficult to filter. So I put it in this room for around about a day and a half at 34 degrees, and that would loosen up the honey and make it a lot easier to spin out and also put through the sieve filter. It's a pretty simple process. The first step is just removing the capping off of the honeycomb, and that just requires taking a knife to it and just cutting off that top part of the honeycomb and just getting access to the honey itself. What I'm doing is scraping off all of that capping into this box. The box has little holes in it, So the honey that's on that capping will eventually drip through those holes into the box itself, and we're going to be using or taking that honey as well. So once all of the capping's taken off, the next thing is just to simply put it into the honey extractor and spin it out. So the extractor takes 3 frames at a time. So what we'll do is put all the frames in there, take the handle, spin it around about 100 times. By that time, one side of the frame's been extracted. Then you take the frames out, turn them the other way around, turn the handle another 100 times, and at that time pretty much most of the honey's been taken out. Now you're never going to get all of the honey out of the frames. There'll be probably about 10% of honey left in the frame, but I'll show you how we deal with that later. Once we've extracted enough honey, we'll open up the tap on the bottom of the extractor and pour the honey through a double mesh sieve, and that'll remove any wax debris. So it's just a matter of continually working through the frames and collecting the honey. This is a great way of doing it. If you're able to have some hives in your backyard, you know where the honey's come from. You know that it hasn't been adulterated in any way. The filtering process is so super simple. It's just a matter of putting it through a sieve, so there's no heating involved, and it's about as pure and as good as you're going to get. This is our first bucket that we extracted, and there's more to come. I continued to extract this way. It was time consuming, but it wasn't hard. It was just a matter of just continually spitting out the honey and filtering it. What we also did with the capping is we put it into that box, and I put it into a warm room and allowed the honey to loosen up a bit and drip through the box where we'd be able to collect it the next day. Earlier I mentioned that while we're doing the extraction, we're never going to be able to get all the honey out of the frames. We're probably only going to be getting about 85-90% out, and there'll still be about 10-15% left in the frames. The way that we deal with this is we simply just put those empty frames back on top of the beehives, and the bees don't waste anything. They'll go in there, they'll take the honey out of those frames, and they'll take it back into their main boxes on the bottom, and we'll be able to give them some honey for the winter, and they can also build up their reserves for the next round of honey production that they're going to be making. So when all was said and done, we ended up with 65 kilograms of honey. Nothing was wasted. We took all of the capping, we melted it down and collected about another kilogram of wax. So we ended up with, in total for the season, about 148 kilograms of honeycomb and honey, as well as a kilogram of wax. So that's not bad for our first main season. Hope you enjoyed the video, and hope to see you next time.